up, I'm sorry.
So after talking about conflict and frustration in the refugee process, we're going to end on a positive note, and I'd like to introduce to you Carrie Wall, who is the Manager of Health and International Services of the American Red Cross, who I've gotten to know pretty well over the last few months. We've been working together, our organizations. And she is going to be speaking today on restoring family links, something that the American Red Cross is very involved in. And the Red Cross has a tracing program in order to reunite families. Carrie Wall is the Manager of Health and International Services at the American Red Cross of Greater Chicago. She manages the Disaster Health Services team, teaches international humanitarian law, works with educators to implement Exploring Humanitarian Law, oversees the Measles Initiative program, and manages Restoring Family Links, as I had just mentioned. Carrie began her career as an AmeriCorps member at the American Red Cross and has worked with disaster-affected individuals doing response and recovery. Her organization's mission is to help people prevent, prepare for, and respond to emergencies. Carrie is an active outdoors woman and has completed 3 marathons and 2 triathlons.
That's good for you.
So without further ado, Carrie.
Thank you. You want me to hold this the whole time? Okay. Am I on the thing? I talk loud, so. Are you going to do the clicker, or do you want me to? Okay, so Restoring Family Links. What is the program? Go ahead. Thank you. So along with the American Red Cross, we work within our international network to help reduce the suffering that people are experiencing when they're displaced by either international armed conflict or natural disaster. So this is a bit of background on what we call the International Red Cross and Red Crescent Movement, or the International Network. There are 3 separate components that make up the network, and we'll start with the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, which is there at the bottom. They have more to do with large international disaster relief operations. So when there's a large operation, they will oversee the response to that disaster. They also help in the creation of new national societies. So those are the 2 main responsibilities of the Federation. Up in the left-hand corner, the ICRC, that stands for the International Committee of the Red Cross. They have 2 main responsibilities, the first being the dissemination of international humanitarian law, and the second being visiting prisoners of war and detainees that are being held all over the world. And the ICRC visits over 500,000 people every year, so they keep very busy with that work. The third component of the international network are these national societies. There's 186 either Red Cross or Red Crescent national societies that are all around the world, one of which is the American Red Cross. So in conjunction with the other members of the network, this is how we do Restoring Family Links. These are the 7 fundamental principles of the international network, and I'd like to highlight 3 of those that really impact Restoring Family Links. The first being impartiality. So the services that we give, there's no judgment based on that, and we give services to everyone who's in need, as long as they fit the criteria and as long as a national society that's involved has the capacity to respond to whatever they need. Neutrality. We do not give any of our service based on political nature, racial nature, or anything like that. We give equal services to everyone. And also independence. It's a huge point within Restoring Family Links for us to make with the populations that we work with, to let them know that we are not part of the American government. The American Red Cross operates completely independently from the government. So Restoring Family Links. What happens when we do Restoring Family Links? So people are either affected by international armed conflict or natural disaster. They then end up qualifying for either Red Cross messages or international tracing. And what those 2 services are, they usually go hand in hand. The Red Cross messages used to be forms of communication when people had no access to postal service, they had no access to cell phones or emails, but considering the level of technology that we have today, and even the level of technology that we have within refugee camps, Red Cross messages are more used as a form of linking families together. So it goes hand in hand with the tracing case that we open up for people who are separated. International tracing. It's really all around the world that we do our work along with those members of the network. And I will go over the responsibilities and some of the details of how we open up a case and what is required for us to open up a case. This is the chain of command, not the chain of command, but the service delivery and how cases work. About 80% of the caseload that we get within the American Red Cross is actually generated overseas. So what that means is there's definitely need for it. There are people that have been separated by their family, But within the American Red Cross, we're getting a lot of our caseload from overseas. So as you can see there, what happens is that Red Cross messages most of the time are generated with another national society, or in the case of a refugee camp, with the International Committee of the Red Cross, who's usually working in a refugee camp. Those Red Cross messages then either get filtered to the National Society of wherever this refugee camp is, or they get filtered to the International Committee of the Red Cross based in Geneva, Switzerland. So if we get a Red Cross message at our national office, which is in Washington, D.C., they have the responsibility to make sure that the case actually fits the criteria, that we're going to be able to work on it, and they have to choose from over 700 chapters throughout the United States of who is going to get that caseload. So if we get a Red Cross message here at our chapter in Chicago, it's then our job to start the search process. So we have to go out, we have to verify that the sought person that's being searched for is actually the person that we're looking for. And how do we do that? Sometimes it's very complicated. We send letters, we make telephone calls. We are now starting to go out and visit with places of worship. We're going out to meet community centers, and sometimes we are even required to go to places like ethnic restaurants, or even visiting neighbors. If we find an address but they're not there, we'll try to discuss with the neighbors if they know who the person is, all to verify that the person that we're looking for is actually the sought person, and letting them know, what we're there for, explaining the Restoring Family Link service, and letting them know that someone is searching for them. So the scope. There are limitations to Restoring Family Links. We usually say, it is a case-to-case basis, but we usually say that you have to be a direct family member in order to open up a case. Health and welfare inquiries, it's based on the availability and the capacity of a national society to accept health and welfare inquiries. And so as you can see up there, we can submit them to trace vulnerable people, including elderly, children, people that have disabilities, and it's when regular communication has been suddenly broken. So it's not something that we would do. It is a case-to-case basis, and we don't have any recent examples that I can give you, but health and welfare is one thing that we do in conjunction with the tracing and the Red Cross messages. So nationwide, these are some of the countries that have produced the most casework for Restoring Family Links. As you can see, most of the countries that are listed there are in Africa, but we do still have a lot of casework from the Cold War and from World War II. Program challenges. As I had mentioned earlier, about 80% of our caseload is generated outside the United States. So there's definitely a need. But we have an issue within the United States of letting people know that this program actually exists. And so as you can see there, 15% of our casework actually starts in the United States. So at our program at the Greater Chicago chapter right now, we are in the steps of doing a lot more outreach. So partnering with agencies that work with refugee and immigrant communities, letting them know that we have this specialized service, that it's free, and that it's available, and that everything that we are doing with clients is confidential. So opportunities for working together. Obviously participating in events like this to let people know that we have a program, and then hopefully all of you will in turn go out and educate people about the fact that this program exists. And working with those refugee and immigrant populations. Last week we met with the Cambodian Association. They had no idea that we had this service. And just in that 30 minutes of meeting with those people that worked there, I think we've probably generated 3 or 4 cases just based on interest. And like, I had no idea you had this. I need to meet with you next week. We need to open up a case. So it definitely works. Community disaster education is something that I want to mention. We do have the free Restoring Family Links program, but we offer other things. We offer free programming called CDE, and that includes going out into the community and giving educational presentations about what do you do during a winter storm? How do you prepare for that? How do you prepare yourself for a tornado or for the spring storms? And then we also have a disaster relief department, which is fairly robust within the Greater Chicago area. So in the event that these communities that are refugee and immigrant populations, if they have a disaster, they are able to get free assistance from the Red Cross, whether that be financial assistance or referrals to other social service agencies. So it's not just Restoring Family Links. There are a lot of other ways that they can capitalize on what we have to offer. So messages of hope. We're going to watch a short video here that does a much better job of summarizing Restoring Family Links than I do. And then we'll come back to that slide and I'll talk about the gentleman that's actually pictured.
Bosnia. Afghanistan, Somalia, El Salvador. Just a few of the places in the world where war or natural disaster shatter lives. Every year, somewhere, thousands of people are uprooted, forced to flee from desperate situations. Refugees, scattered far from home, families separated, often across continents. Helping people separated by war and natural disaster is a vital service of the American Red Cross. We help locate missing family members and help reestablish communications. These tracing services are provided in accordance with the Geneva Conventions and by our responsibilities as a member of the International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement.
Tracing and messaging services are something that the American Red Cross provides across the country. The chapter plays the essential role in this because they're the link between the person here and the person overseas. This service really allows a chapter to really touch someone's life in a very, very meaningful way.
One life touched is that of Sylvester Kaboya, a refugee from war-torn Sierra Leone. He now lives with his wife and 2 children in New Haven, Connecticut. But not long ago, they were on opposite sides of the ocean, uncertain if they'd ever see each other again. Several years ago, Sylvester was forced to leave them behind in a refugee camp. He had been granted refugee status. They had not. Trying to survive in a strange land, he found he couldn't even contact them.
I was so lonesome, lonely, always out of job, no source of income. Then how will I get them over here?
Then months later, things changed. Sylvester received a visit from the Red Cross.
It began when we received the Red Cross message to deliver to Sylvester about his family in Mali via the International Committee of the Red Cross.
I was so happy, so pleased in mind.
The message was made possible by a worldwide network of National Red Cross and Red Crescent societies and the ICRC Tracing Center in Geneva, Switzerland.
And the ICRC and the Red Cross movement as a whole exchanges literally millions of Red Cross messages every year. And it's quite incredible that somebody can write a Red Cross message in the middle of Congo or Macedonia, and that Red Cross message can filter its way very quickly to hundreds and thousands of points across the world.
For Sylvester, that point was the Red Cross chapter in New Haven. And now with their help, Sylvester had a way of communicating with his family in the refugee camp.
Sylvester was determined to bring his family to America, and we were going to help any way that we could. By communicating via Red Cross message forms, we were able to help Sylvester get the necessary immigration papers to and from his family.
Here in America, the traditional path for a Red Cross message or a tracing case, we start at the local chapter. From the local chapter, it gets sent here to International Family Tracing at headquarters, and from here we send it on to either the International Committee of the Red Cross in Geneva or on straight to the National Society, and then gets forwarded down to the local level.
In most instances, the general location of a Red Cross message recipient is known. And as with Sylvester's case, research at both American Red Cross National Headquarters and the chapter can usually determine a specific address. But sometimes the case is far more difficult when the Red Cross is asked to try to locate a person who is truly missing, often as a result of armed conflict.
The ICRC has a unique role in situations where people have gone missing. The international community has given it a role of trying to establish the fate of people who have disappeared in conflict through its Central Tracing Agency.
The Central Tracing Agency of the ICRC, with years of experience, draws on vast databases of prisoners of war and refugee camp populations. And its mandate through the Geneva Conventions allows it to reach across barriers that would be insurmountable to others.
The Red Cross can get into areas, conflict zones, and so forth, that no other organization in the world can get into. And for many families, that means locating or communicating with a loved one when there is no other means.
This work of the ICRC is a crucial link in a chain of inquiry that can often begin or end in America at a Red Cross chapter. The success of any search often depends on their efforts.
Tracing at the local level really involves a lot of detective work on the part of the caseworkers, going door to door, talking to people from different countries, going to local restaurants, local grocery stores, local faith groups, to try and find out if they know of the person or they heard of the person that we're looking for.
It really takes persistence. You have to be patient. Many times you're going to come up empty-handed, but that one time that you find that lead and it leads you to something else and it leads you to something else and you find the person at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, there's nothing like it.
The next story should inspire you, we hope so. A family from Africa that had been separated for most of the past 7 years is back together tonight.
Sylvester Gaboya and his family were at last reunited after nearly 2 years of separation.
That day, I will never forget it. I felt home when I saw them. When we had to hug ourselves, then we believed back we are together, then we are back home.
It's just a feeling of great joy to be able to be a part of helping with that reunification.
Sylvester's case is the best possible scenario. Here it started with Red Cross messages, and then finally his children were able to come and be reunified with him, and the Red Cross was able to be a part of all of that.
Red Cross made a real difference in the life of Sylvester Gaboya and his family, but it's a scene that plays out in communities across the country and across the world.
I'm a real advocate of tracing because I see the real joy that somebody has out of reading a Red Cross message from his family member, or I've seen being able to bring children back to their parents. And it really is, I think, of all of the services that Red Cross offers, it's the most human.
I am so thankful to the Red Cross that helped me to get my family to join me in America.
So that's restoring family links in a nutshell, and we'll go back to that last slide that I left off of. The gentleman on the right-hand side is actually one of our most recent clients. He was separated from his wife and his 3 daughters in a refugee camp in Tanzania, and under circumstances that we don't know, he somehow came to the United States. He found out about the Restoring Family Links program, opened up a case with our local chapter, and in about a year, the International Committee of the Red Cross was able to locate his wife and his daughters, who were still in a refugee camp in Tanzania. And one day, Emma, who's sitting in the back row, who actually does our Restoring Family Links program, she received these Red Cross messages and these color photographs of these girls and said, I'm brand new to this, I don't know what this is. So we ended up finding him through his caseworker at World Relief, which is a great agency, and met with him and was able to deliver these messages that are in his native language, these color photographs of his daughters and his wife, who he hasn't seen for over 10 years. And they do have a working postal service in Tanzania, so he doesn't have to use the Red Cross message route. But he's now trying to get the rest of his family to come over to the States, which is something that the American Red Cross does not do. They have to go through the standard immigration process. That's unfortunately something we're not able to do. But that's one of our feel-good stories as of late. Go to the next slide. And then just any questions about restoring family links in general and what we do with tracing or Red Cross messages. If you do and you want a takeaway, we actually have brochures out on our table as well as business cards. So if you know someone who was separated from their family, is currently separated from their family, and they meet the criteria, if it happened in an armed conflict or a natural disaster, that individual may definitely qualify, and we would encourage you to call the local chapter and also tell your friends and family and spread the word in your community that this free program does exist and is available to everyone. And then we have one more slide. If you want to take Emma's contact information down, we actually have that on this slide. But thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'll be around.
I want to welcome Rebecca Streifler. Becky is with the American Red Cross. She has been a partner of ours throughout this entire 2 months now of programming. Quite a bit of programming. She's going to say a few words in closing, and then we'll wrap up. Just one moment.
Thank you. Is this on? Okay. I want to just thank all the panelists. This has been, I've been near tears this entire afternoon, and I think it was just a very powerful lecture. Today's event has really been the culmination of the American Red Cross of Greater Chicago's 2-month series of events entitled Humanity and War, a Dialogue. This was centered around a photo exhibit that we have at Loyola University Chicago called Our World at War, Photojournalism Beyond the Front Lines. This exhibit opened in September, and for the past 2 months we've had international programming around it. I want to give a special thank you to our partners, the International Committee of the Red Cross, DePaul Human Rights Law Institute, Loyola University Chicago, and Northeastern Illinois University, because we've sparked many dialogues to educate our community about the linkages between international and local human suffering. I want to extend a special thank you to the Geraldson family, who has generously sponsored our 4-part lecture series on behalf of their father, Raymond Geraldson Sr. In our first lecture, we discussed ways in which we can mitigate youth violence. We heard from students in our communities who live in war zones similar to the ones depicted in the photographs. In Childhood Denied, we heard from experts on the issues of child trafficking and how child soldiers are used in conflict. Unfortunately, this closely mirrors our local gang warfare. Last weekend here at DePaul, we examined how art is used in conflict zones to protect those covered under the Geneva Conventions. And today, we examine the complex issues of refugees as they face the resettlement process. As we have seen through today's panels, there is very important work going on in our community. Even though these events are coming to an end, I encourage each and every one of you to carry on the dialogues that have been prevalent over the last 2 months. As Ron Haviv, one of the exhibit photographers, so eloquently said, as difficult as it is to see and hear images of suffering, we must take away from it is hope. Hope for the present and hope for the future. Think about the ways that you can make a difference, whether it be a financial contribution, through volunteerism, by giving your time to the many organizations who deal with refugees, human rights issues, youth, or international issues, or through ongoing education, by teaching and promoting the values of international humanitarian law. I call upon you today to act. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
My name is Angel Graff. I don't know if I introduced myself earlier. I'm the grant coordinator with the International Human Rights Law Institute. I'm also a DePaul University College of Law student in the evening program, and I have the distinct pleasure of working with the Society for Asylum and Immigration Law, a student organization that really got themselves off the ground because of their interests in these issues and in the issues facing not only refugees, but asylees, those who don't have the protections of already being allowed into the United States, who have to fight for that right to stay, for immigrants and for detained immigrants who face challenges that some of us can't even imagine. And I just want to thank all of you for coming out today to think about these people and to remember that, as Greg said earlier, they are human beings. Fatima, Ahlam, people you see every day, they face challenges that we can't even imagine. I see graduates with bachelor's degrees who are faced with having to take low-paying jobs and don't want to do it. And then you see refugees who have postgraduate degrees who would be excited to take a job at McDonald's. We see, for example, in the Detain Clinic, and Linus Chan was here earlier, you work with students, high school boys, who get in a car with their friends and someone has an alcoholic substance. And instead of getting a slap on the wrist, they're removed from the country. these are people just like all of us, and I just want to thank the American Red Cross and the international community for the Red Cross and our other partners at Loyola and Northeastern for helping us to bring this event here. And I really hope that all of you have had a time to think about the challenges that the Iraqi refugees in Chicago and all of the other refugees and those that are here face, and I just really hope that it's been a benefit to you. So, thanks.